Can I start?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Right. This is truly going to be a short class because of the fact that there is nothing much to teach here. This, lest you think I don't know, this is Simone De Beauvoir, The Second Sex. Can you read it? Anyone?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Now, what happens with this book is like digging a mountain and finding a small rat. That is what happens with this book. And I don't say it as an insult to Simone de Beauvoir. I don't say it as an insult to feminism. I say this because this is a book that should be taught in a class of literature. Absolutely in a class of literature. Okay, because she is somebody who's talking about how different people, most of whom we don't even know. Okay, she's talking about, for example, D.H. Lawrence. She's talking about Montherlant, written Monthrlant, D.H. Lawrence, Claudel, Breton, and Stendhal. I don't know who these people are. I do know D.H. Lawrence. And I'm not a fan of D.H. Lawrence, so I haven't read many of his works. So these are her 5 authors. Now, what is she doing in this? She is basically saying that these authors mystify, okay? They create a myth about women. That is what she talks about. And she is essentially looking at how women have been portrayed in these authors, in these 5 authors that I have read. Let me type those names out for you so that Okay, though she has been uh, put into the category of feminism. I call her the reluctant feminist because of the fact that she didn't like the label of being called a feminist. Simone de Beauvoir, unlike the person who will follow her, Kate Millett, is not really this militant type of a feminist. Now, before I go to deal with these ladies, I would like you to know that there is a fundamental difference
Sir,
Yes, ma'am.
can you type the names of those authors whom you're talking
I
about?
will do. I'll come to her
Yeah,
in a minute. But first, let me clear this up.
yeah.
There is a fundamental difference between what is now called feminism and what are called women's movements. Okay. Uh, if you look at people in the end of the 18th century and the 19th century, there aren't many, there's actually probably only one, Mary Wollstonecraft, who was a rights activist. Rights activist here is to be understood as women. What is happening? As women who wanted the same status of men in society as well as the rights that men enjoyed. This is a women's movement, one kind of a women's movement. Okay, and in India, we've had one particular women's movement, and that happened in the erstwhile undivided Andhra Pradesh in the mid-80s. It started very spontaneously somewhere in the Nellore district or Ongole, which is called Prakasham district. Women agitated against the government. They agitated against the government and asked for a ban on the sale of arak. Okay. And they said that they said two things. They said the first thing was that men were not saving money. What they were doing is that they would go to work, earn daily wages, take that money, go straight to an arak shop and drink arak till they exhausted their money. So that was one dimension of it, which is the fact that they were not saving. They were not giving anything. They were not really providing even for the family. The second dimension is an extension of this, which is they would come home drunk, and when there is no food, because there is no money saved, money has not been given to them, to the women of the house, finding no food in the house, they would actually abuse. By abuse, I don't mean verbal abuse. They would start beating up their wives, their children. So, because men were doing this, you will find that the women all got together spontaneously, and it spread like a wildfire across the state of Andhra Pradesh, the undivided Andhra Pradesh. If you have, if you recall from recent memory, there was a bypole in this particular place called Dubbak. Some people say Dubbak, some people say Dubbaka. I am told Dubbaka is actually the correct name of the village. In Telangana, the fires were stoked there. In those days, there was no separate Telangana. I'm talking about Telangana as it existed. So Telangana as it existed as a part of Andhra Pradesh. So that was another women's movement. Women saying that they needed to control men. So what happened is that prohibition on Arak was I mean, there was prohibition on the sale of Arak. This was imposed by the then Chief Minister K. Vijay Bhaskar Reddy. So this is one particular instance of a women's movement. The women also wanted, it's a very cunning nomenclature that people use. That this is an anti-Arak movement. It is not an anti-Arak movement. It was an anti-Arak and anti-toddy movement as well. If you want to know generally if there's anyone here who doesn't know what Arak, A-R-R-A-C-K is, it is that which is called Sara. Okay, it was called Sara. And in some instances, it was also called Gudamba because they created alcohol brew by using jaggery, good as it is called. That is more in Hyderabad. So the Arak part covers these two, Sara and Gudamba. Toddy is different. It is Kallu. Okay. And there were two kinds of Kallu. Tati Kallu, which was from a palm that gives the munjal. I don't know what those are called in English. And there was also a thing called...
They are called ice apples.
Sorry?
Ice apple.
Ice apple.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. So that was one of the things, and the other one is called Ita Kallu. I have no idea what Ita is in English again. But most of the time it was Tati Kallu. But what has happened is that the people who usually were working on toddy. Toddy is actually anglicization of this being called tadi. Tadi is what it was called in Hindi, Marathi, Gujarati, all these languages. It was called tadi. So that's how it became toddy under the Britishers. So what had happened is that the people who harvested toddy were a very powerful class. If you look at the two powerful classes, both in Andhra and in Telangana, and especially in Telangana, the two most powerful BC BCs are Yadavs and Gauds, and toddy tappers are called Gauds. So that was a very powerful lobby. They were ministers who belonged to that particular lobby, and so toddy didn't come under. It didn't come under. What should I say? Uh, under this ban. So after that, what happened is, why am I telling you that story? Anyway, that movement was a failure because of the fact that other forms of alcohol were available. People even took to drinking beer and things like that. And toddy, you require to consume in very large quantities to get that kick that people want, apparently. I've never had this. The freshly removed toddy is called Neera, which is supposed to be very good for health. It still doesn't, it is unfermented. So they said we are going to sell it as Neera. That is how they kept the thing in the market. But what they started doing is they started adding diazepam, lorazepam, all these kind. One second, please. What was the, when was the last class that I took? Day before yesterday or yesterday?
Day before.
Day before, yes. Let me tell you an amusing story. After I finished your class, normally once I recorded, the recording needs to be converted, it says, into an MP4 file. And it had just started converting, and suddenly my Zoom subscription was renewed. And since that happened, it said, we are giving you an updated version of Zoom. And this file that was converting just disappeared. No, I'm not able to find. How does one get this out of the way? Oh my God. Don't tell me I have to get this out of the way. Oh, that went somewhere. Oh, Jesus. Okay. So it was a failure because toddy was sold, beer was sold, and then N.T. Ramarao came and imposed total prohibition, but he couldn't impose prohibition on toddy. And so people were drinking that by putting these barbiturates, as they are called, which are, you know, the diazepam, lorazepam. Of late, most of this thing, I believe, is mixed with alprazolam, uh, all of which are psychiatric medications for those who suffer from anxiety. So the latest is alprazolam, but it wasn't always that. Anyway, so that was another women's movement that kind of succeeded in getting one form of alcohol banned, but as a movement against alcohol, it didn't succeed. And N.T. Ramarao's attempts at creating an alcohol ban, total alcohol ban, were undone by two things. One is that he couldn't ban toddy, and the second thing is that a liquor mafia came into being. So there was bootlegging, people were getting booze, and these factories, I'm telling you this because this is how, when I come to Nancy Fraser, I'll tell you a few things about how this works. So there was this entire parallel black economy running with the liquor mafia. Everybody and anybody could get a bottle of booze. And the liquor companies were so smart that they started packing them in PET bottles. They were not packing them. The companies also became a part of this. And the idea of putting them in PET bottles was that you can destroy the PET bottle, the PET bottle, that is, not all three letters in capitals. So they sold in PET bottles. And that's why when Chandrababu Naidu realized that the revenue that should come to the state is being hogged by the liquor mafia, he tried to remove prohibition. He removed it, but he couldn't unsettle the mafia. The mafia till today controls the prices of liquor in Andhra Pradesh and Telangana. Anyway, so this was another particular facet you should know. So women fighting for their rights is a women's movement. I'm sorry about this. Now, what you need to know is feminism is actually a French phenomenon in its beginnings, and it, unlike women's movements, considers itself to be a certain kind of theoretical framework, uh, like what should we say? Like liberalism and Marxism. It considers itself to be a framework like that. You know, you have some grounding, you ground things in it, and you will see that you build other things around it. Liberalism said it, the 4 Fs that I talked about, but it didn't stop there. It went into many other things. So similarly, you will say that this is just the beginning. It is just the fount from which a lot of other things come, right? So now, one of the earliest feminists was supposed Simone de Beauvoir, but she herself was reluctant to be called that because she saw herself as someone who was a multi-faceted philosopher who was influenced in large measure by Karl Marx, um, and uh, yeah, Jean Paul Sartre. In fact, Sartre was someone with whom she had an open relationship throughout her life. Yeah, this is the name I forgot I was searching for. Yeah, so she was also influenced by Maurice Merleau-Ponty and Jean-Paul Sartre. I don't know if you're aware of this, but all of them started as Marxists. Okay, Maurice Merleau-Ponty, Jean-Paul Sartre, and Simone De Beauvoir. They were a trio that ran a journal in which revolutionary articles were published in that particular journal, whose name I can't remember now. And she had this very strange relationship with Jean-Paul Sartre. Not only was it an open relationship, she had adopted 2 daughters, Olga and I can't remember the second one. I only remember that her name starts with a D. So Jean-Paul Sartre made sexual overtures to Olga, who rebuffed him. But the second daughter became his willing partner. And that didn't bother Simone de Beauvoir at all. She had her own relationship with him, which was, when I say an open relationship, it was a sexual relationship. So Sartre also is the biggest influence on her life. Okay. So French existentialism is a product of the thought of both Sartre and de Beauvoir. Why am I saying French existentialism? Why are we not calling it just existentialism? before I go to that, let me also make another point about Simone de Beauvoir. De Beauvoir is also considered to be a feminist existentialist. Again, she wasn't very particularly happy with this designation, but people give all kinds of designations to all kinds of people. For example, look at what's happening with Gandhi today. Okay, he's seen as a debauch. He's seen as a casteist. You can't help it. He wasn't any of those things. But that particular image and impression of Gandhi has been firmly entrenched. It's become entrenched thanks to the lionization of Ambedkar. And I'm making this for a reason. To make Ambedkar great, you needed the other who's not great. And the other that people chose was Gandhi. That is the other that people chose. So the scheduled castes, who basically were helped so much by Gandhi, are those who see Gandhi as the other and Ambedkar as their savior. Let's not get into the argument of right or wrong. That's immaterial. But sometimes you need the othering. Okay. So people can give whatever designations they want. Another person who didn't want a designation was Michel Foucault. Michel Foucault, I'm mentioning his name because when we come to Nancy Fraser, we'll be talking about Foucault. Michel Foucault basically didn't want to be called anything. He didn't want to be called anything. But people gave him the title of a structuralist. Without doubt, there are elements of structuralism in Foucault. But just the presence of elements from something doesn't make one a structuralist. So all his life he fought, and finally he decided that unless he branded himself as something, people will not stop calling him a structuralist. So Foucault called himself a historian of ideas. Ultimately, that's what he called himself. And he asked everyone, he implored with everyone not to call him a structuralist, because he said, I'm not a structuralist. And Foucault was very, very aware of the fact that all his works were not consistent with each other. Some of them were inconsistent with some of his other writings. When we come to doing Foucault, when we start the second year classes, that is when I'll tell you about these things. He's a part of the second year syllabus. What are all these bloody insurance fellows who keep calling? So she has unfortunately been saddled with this thing of feminist existentialist. She should have been just called a French existentialist. Now, why French existentialism? Why are we talking about that as, why aren't we just saying existentialism? We don't say English liberalism, or we don't say French liberalism. We don't say that. So why, in the case of France, do we talk about existentialism as French existentialism? The answer to that is neither of these names are new to you. I have at many junctures spoken about Nietzsche and about Heidegger. Okay, Heidegger's philosophy was existentialism was, let me put it that way. Okay, the appearance is the essence. There is no difference. And he believed that to get to the truth, you have to destruct or destroy. He believed in that. And his existentialism also led to phenomenology. So you will see that French existentialism was something which was very different from this. Now, if you basically look at phenomenology, at French existentialism, its difference with the German existentialism, if you want to call it that, it was this difference between German and French forms of existentialisms. Existentialism was due to the definition given by De Beauvoir. She said the appearance precedes the appearance precedes, why am I saying precedes? Yeah, precedes the essence. So she did not rule out that there could be a difference uh, between essence and appearance. The only difference was that she said that it is the appearance that precedes the essence. And this is the principle she used in order to establish what is now gender. She saw engendering as a social phenomenon. Are you with me? Is it okay? Do you need some explanation here? Anyone?
No, sir, it's clear.
It's clear. You just are feeling sad that after having said there's nothing to teach, this man is again wasting so much time. Got that. Now let's speed things up. Simone de Beauvoir argued that people are not born as men or women. They are not born as men or women. The attribution of the identity of male and female, she says, is a natural, is a social process and not a natural one. People are born with a sexual identity, but engendering, which is attributing a gender, but engendering is a social process, one which is a part of the system of patriarchy. Okay, she says engendering is a social process. The process of engendering is done through the creation of the other against the original. The original becomes the man and takes on all the positive qualities that are required in society and attributes the opposites of all the positive qualities to the other, which is women. I should say woman, not women. This is what makes women the second, oh no. This is what makes women the second sex. Now, she, in her book, The Second Sex, argues against 5 writers who she believes perpetuated myths about women and their sexuality. So who are these boys? Most of them are French. The 5 authors that she talks about Montalon, not Montalant, Montalon, D.H. Lawrence. In fact, he is the one she bashes most. Claudel, Breton, these are the 5 people, the 5 authors whom she takes on very, very bravely and argues against their portrayal of women in society and how they have perpetuated all those things that came through patriarchy. So now I'm not going to go into each of the authors. It's going to, then I'll need 2 semesters for that. What she says about these 5 authors is how they describe women. Just let me get the order. Yeah. Childhood, adolescence, womanhood, mother, is there anything else she says? I don't think there's anything else. While talking about adolescence, which in some books, some translations, you will find in some translations, you will find it being called the young girl. If you prefer that, please go ahead and use it. Now, let me tell you about what she's saying here. By othering the women, men make women dependent on them, meaning on the men. Men make women dependent on them. In the childhood, it is the father who's the figure of authority. It is the father who kind of, what should I say? He is supposed to provide the child with security, make sure nothing goes wrong with her life. So the father is there in the childhood. I'll talk about adolescence in the end, because there she talks about sexuality and how sexual preferences come into being. Then she talks about womanhood and marriage. Some translations will give you that as the married woman. Okay, the married woman, but I prefer Womanhood and Marriage, what she claims is the father now transfers the responsibility of his child to the husband. After she's married, it is the husband who dominates her, all in the name of women being unequal, women being incapable of doing things for themselves, incapable of fighting for themselves. So they have to depend on the husband. Okay. And finally, the mother. When the woman becomes a mother at a certain age, it is the son who takes on the responsibility of, taking care of his mother. Mothers have to be taken care of. So all this for her is a social construct. It is a social construct. And she believes that this social construct is something that impacts on the lives of women negatively by confining them to their homes. Now, adolescence or the young girl phase is where the girl is discovering her sexuality. Okay, she's finding out who she is, what she is, what attracts her sexually. And she says this is a phase, this is the phase where a girl decides to remain heterosexual or to become a lesbian. Okay, to be a heterosexual or to be a lesbian. That is what she says. And if a girl chooses to be a lesbian, she's immediately taken as a deviant. And by taking that person as a deviant, you try to put her straight. You try to straighten her out. In fact, I don't know if any of you, no, you wouldn't have. There was a social networking site which was launched by Google. Actually, it was one of the early social networking sites. It became extremely popular only in India. It was called Orkut, O-R-K-U-T. In Orkut, you have to write about yourself. Who are you? What are you? And they also put in that sexual orientation. And what they gave is you can't enter that. You have to choose from a menu that drops down. Straight, gay, lesbian. Straight That means the others are not straight. That is the argument that you find with regarding to lesbians in Simone de Beauvoir. Okay, so she basically argues that it is this whole thing of attributing certain kind of qualities is the first step. The second step is playing the role of the dominant, not as somebody who's doing it because he likes dominating, but doing it altruistically. Doing it altruistically to take care of his daughter, wife, mother. It's an altruistic act. That is how it is portrayed. And she takes Montalon, D.H. Lawrence, Claudel, Breton, and Stendhal as the most notorious writers who forwarded the stereotypes. These are all, according to her, stereotypes. Okay, so she said that these are the ways in which men dominate women. Okay, and they reduce them to a second sex. They do not recognize their potential to do things. They do not allow them to discover themselves sexually and otherwise. Otherwise, I mean, you don't know. Somebody might, today we see excellent doctors who are women, not gynecologists and obstetricians, neurologists, urologists. You find all these really excellent daughters, women, excellent women who have done very, very well for themselves. But if you treated them as a second sex, then the problem would be that they won't be able to achieve anything. Talking of doctors, I want to let you know that India has a higher percentage of women in male, female, the thing in the case of doctors. And this didn't happen because Indians are more educated. It happened only because of one reason. The one reason because of which this whole thing happened is, simply put, women didn't want to be seen by men doctors. In India, you hardly find men gynecologists and obstetricians. But I mean, abroad, sorry, in India, yeah. All gynecologists and obstetricians are women. though there are other fields they have excelled in, like I've said, but still a vast number of them are doing this, or they are general physicians, which is internal medicine, to whom women can go and confide their problems. You have women psychiatrists, because girl patients can go to them and discuss what they cannot discuss with men in this society. So the rise of women in a medical profession in India is not because they have been liberated, but it is because they have been dominated. A husband wouldn't want his wife to be seen by a male. A father wouldn't want his daughter to be seen by a male. And so it's a contradiction. Women came out and became doctors because of the fact that men didn't want their women to be seen by other men. So please don't think that in India we were more enlightened or whatever. No, it's the same patriarchy at work. Okay, I think I can stop here because I can't go into the discussions of will you come back for a class in the evening so that I can finish off the other two? Or would you like me to finish off Kate Millett now? Kate Millett won't take more than 10 minutes.
Take in the evening, sir.
That's one view. Any other views?
We'll finish in the evening, sir. Both Millet and Fraser.
Okay. So what time? 5:30?
Yes.
Okay. So I'll put this straight away on your this thing. So please share with everyone.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So sorry, I seem to have become. There is a joke. Let me tell you a joke. There is this character about. It's a fictitious character whose name is Don Pedro. So Don Pedro is one of those great, wonderful characters. Hell of a lot of jokes on him. And one of the jokes is that there was a milking competition. Okay. And milking of cows. That was the competition. And so everybody was given one cow. And they were given a certain time. And they were told, go ahead now. Go and milk your cows and come back with how much milk you have been able to draw out of them. So people come, somebody says, I got 3 liters, somebody says, I got 5 liters, somebody says, I have not 3 liters, somebody says 15 liters, somebody says 20 liters, somebody says 8 liters, 18 liters. And while people are going on, there is still no sign of Don Pedro. And finally, Don Pedro makes an appearance. And he puts out his bucket and he's milked 5 liters. And the organizers give the prize to Don Pedro. So everybody is up in arms. Everybody is up in arms. And they say, we have milked so much more. This man has milked only 5 liters. How come you're giving him the prize? So the organizers say, unfortunately, by mistake, we gave Don Pedro a bull instead of a cow. And he still got 5 liters of milk out of it. So that's why he gets the prize. I seem to have become like that. I am basically out of nothing. I have spent 2 hours, 1.5 hours. Anyway, sorry about that, but today evening we finish. That is a promise. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Righto. Thank you.